Welcome back to UWP on Xbox One. Darren, what are we going to talk about in this session?
So in this session, we're going to focus on those experiences that are somewhat unique to UWP on the Xbox.
Gotcha. These are things we may not have on other platforms.
Correct.
All right. Starting with resources.
Exactly. You don't have an Xbox on another platform. You just have an Xbox.
That's true.
So obviously an Xbox isn't the same as the desktop, and there are certain constraints on what resources you have available to you. One of them in particular is memory. These are constraints that UWP developers are already used to. There's always going to be some sort of memory limit, some sort of CPU limit, and it's special. It is. So on the Xbox, you're limited to 1 gigabyte of RAM if your app is in the foreground.
Okay.
There is a new background model that's available to applications for things like background audio and so on and so forth, and they have a much more restrictive memory footprint of 128 megabytes.
Yeah, that's pretty lean.
It is. One thing to note, the current issue of the preview doesn't actually enforce those when you're running in debug mode.
So my app works great right now.
Exactly, but if you run into production mode, then those things are going to be enforced. So you've got to make sure you take it into
1 gigabyte foreground, 128 megabytes background. All right, you got to think clearly.
Yeah, you need to shut down your UI, you need to garbage collect, a number of different things to make sure you fall into that.
Okay. What about CPU?
So you've got a share of 2 to 4 CPUs.
Nice.
So, why 2 to 4? Well, the Xbox is a multi-tasking system. And so depending upon what else is going on, you may only get 2 cores, you may get 4 cores. So be aware that really processor-intensive activities may not be the best target for this.
Sometimes you can trade processor utilization with GPU because there's a lot of power there as well.
Absolutely. So in the UWP on the Xbox, you have 45%, give or take, depending upon what's going on with the system, of the GPU available to you.
Beats 44%.
Does.
All right. Anything else?
So another thing to consider is we have Win2D. We have the composition APIs, which kind of layer on top of DirectX. In the UWP environment, you have access to DirectX 11 feature level 10. You do not have access to DirectX 12 at this moment in time.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Great. UWP developers have limits on every family that we go to. IoT has a limit, phone has a limit, everything has a limit. And now we know what it is in Xbox as well.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so what else is special? So we know that now, and what's special about Xbox One?
So the other thing that's special is these controllers are your primary input devices as opposed to keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
So, we need to build our applications if we're targeting the Xbox environment with these devices in mind.
Okay. And there's a lot of buttons on those things.
There are a lot of buttons on these. This particular gamepad happens to have the optional keyboard on there.
Yeah.
So that makes it a lot easier if you've got to enter in a lot of information. But, we need to bear in mind that most people won't have a device such as this.
And does it just map as if it's a keyboard?
This does, yes. All the key presses will come through exactly as if it's a regular keyboard. You can also attach a USB keyboard to your Xbox One as well.
What's that other little device you had right there?
So this is the Xbox One media controller.
Okay.
So it's a remote control device, accesses through infrared, and so you can actually control a lot of things here. So if we take a look at the slide, we can see a lot of the buttons on there, and we can see how these things match up. So unique to the Xbox controller are the left and right triggers, the left and right bumpers.
Yeah.
You also have a difference between the left stick and the directional pad, although they both map to the arrow keys.
Okay, so both the left stick and the directional pad, basically the same thing inside a UWP app.
Correct.
It's pretty nice on the, let's see, are they what move the mouse around as well?
When you're in mouse mode, the left stick moves the mouse cursor around.
Okay, and then how does what's it translate to, the right stick?
So the right stick actually maps to gamepad stick inputs.
Okay, so it's special.
It is special, yes.
Okay. All right, we have got a lot of buttons as well that we have, especially those A, B, X, Y.
Yep, so what we have with those buttons is the A button maps to your enter support.
Oh, so like hitting the enter key or maybe the space key?
Exactly. And your B button maps to escape.
Escape, okay.
Which is generally a keyboard shortcut for back as well.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So those are your key.
And now we've got
elements.
X and Y.
So X and Y, those are just inputs. So
just
gamepad
whatever
X.
you want.
Exactly.
Okay, so nothing uniform from app to app. This is XY is up to you.
Yes, so you've got an opportunity here to create sort of a power experience if you want.
Yeah.
You know, make it discoverable, could be a nice little piece of gloss on your application.
Like in the Netflix app, Y is typically search.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we also have the menu button on our gamepad, and that also exists on our remote control. That is effectively brings up your context menu, and the same as the menu key on your regular keyboards.
Okay.
A lot of people don't actually use that, but
I use it constantly.
Yeah.
Keyboards without it drive me crazy.
It's kind of the right click.
Yeah, that's right. Well, a lot like the right click.
Exactly. So, those are kind of your built-in buttons.
Okay.
And how they get mapped up.
And then we have that other one, the two squares on it.
The 2 squares, so that's your view button.
Okay.
So that's kind of, there is no automatic association with that one, but it's the sort of thing that you might want to perhaps attach to your split view on if you have a hamburger menu or something like that, a nice shortcut to open the split view and then perhaps put input focus in there.
So is that remote control, I see it in the slide, is it basically all the same buttons?
It has some of the same buttons, but it also has some unique buttons as well. So, we have the directional, which maps to the D-pad.
Okay.
The center button is select, which maps to the A button.
Okay.
Underneath that, we have a back button, which maps to B.
Okay.
We also have a one guide button. You can't catch that in your UWP application. So if you press that, it'll bring up the one guide menu on top of your application.
It's sort of like the Windows key on the keyboard. You can't catch that either.
Yeah, absolutely. System level keys that get handled before they get passed to you.
Okay.
So if we move down, we have on the left-hand side the volume control. Again, that's intercepted by the system.
Okay, so not for you.
We have a mute button, again intercepted by the system. To the right of that, we have what would ordinarily be channel up and down.
Sure.
But that maps to page up and page down in your UWP app.
Oh, if I have a grid view and I need to scroll down quickly, I could use that.
Yep, so you capture those. And then underneath there are the media controls. Now, these interact with the system media transport. So if you've built a media app, then these will work for pausing and so on and so forth, but you can't catch them directly within your application.
Gotcha. And just a standard key down event.
Yes.
And I can catch it. That's really
Key down,
nice.
key press.
That's easy enough. And I think a lot of developers will be surprised that a bulk of those buttons will just work without them catching anything. Absolutely.
And so again, we kind of referred to this earlier. If you want to build custom experiences, then you can capture these things and do specific things that you might make sense in your app.
So let's go through the mapping here so make sure we get a feel for what these built-in buttons are actually supporting. We start with the arrow keys, right? You can use those already. That's right there on the D-pad. And then space and enter, basically the same thing. So I've got a button highlighted and I want to click it.
Yeah, it's your primary interaction selection mode.
A. Yep. That's right. All right.
And anybody who uses the Xbox is familiar with back.
Now there's an asterisk by the description of back.
And that's basically because if you don't handle the back button, it will or the B button, I should say, on the B button, back button on the remote, it will automatically raise the system back requested event.
Okay.
Now, if you're not handling the back requested event, nothing will happen, obviously. So it's up to you to make sure you capture that if you want on a multi-page UWP application to leverage the B as kind of the system back request.
Okay, so that's nice. It kind of has a double effect that way. If I don't have navigation and I'm not catching the back button anyway, it's completely invisible to me, but it gives me that extra option.
Yeah,
Very
and
nice.
then we have an asterisk on the menu key, and that's basically because it maps to show context menu.
Okay, makes sense to me. All right, so let's move to accelerators and all these advanced buttons that we have.
Yes, so page up and page down. That's kind of the standard interaction we have on long lists. On the keyboard, you use page up and page down. On the remote, you would use the channel up and channel down keys.
Yeah.
That maps to the left and right trigger on the gamepad.
Gotcha. That's cool to see what it aligns to in controls as well. I'm sure in the calendar view, I switch from calendar to calendar or from month to month that way.
Yep.
And all the way down to flip view, so I can flip as well, going from item to
through
item.
your images and so on.
That's pretty cool.
So that works for the horizontal, up and down. How do we move?
Works for the vertical.
That's what I meant.
I know it is. Yes.
Yep. And then the next one handles the horizontal.
Okay.
So we use our left and right bumpers on the gamepad.
All right. Which ones are the bumpers?
These are the ones on the shoulders here.
Okay.
And so that maps to that. There's no other equivalent.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. So you get a little bit of bonus just for having it on the Xbox.
Yes, indeed.
And what do we recommend we do with that?
Well, if you have, say, a hub view,
Oh yeah.
then you could use that to move across on pivots. That could change your pivots for you.
That's the way Xbox works today.
Yes.
I use it on the 360, and I can hit those bumpers and it goes as fast
Does
as
the
possible.
360 have color, Jerry?
Shut up.
So the other scenario that you can handle with the triggers is if you've configured a scroll view to support zoom in, zoom out, then they will actually map to the zooming in and out operations. So you might want to say, for example, you've got a map control.
Yeah.
You might want to attach those triggers to zooming in and zooming out your map.
Interesting fact. Zoom in defaults to enabled.
Well, there you go.
Go figure. And finally, the view button.
Yep. So there's nothing directly associated with that right now, but one of the recommendations is you could use it, as we mentioned before, for navigating into your split views. So you open up your hamburger and put focus in there, so then you're moving left and right, up and down inside the hamburger itself.
Yeah, not to be confused with the button that looks like a hamburger button.
Exactly.
It's just
Which
what
is
it
your context menu.
That's right. Xbox came before hamburger button. All right, let's look at it in code. I think this will help developers get their head wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple.
Yeah, there's nothing magic here. Fundamentally, we're just trapping our virtual keys. We're mapping those things. And so, as you can see, here's an example of some of the things you can capture. You know, if you look at the enumeration, then you'll see all of these available to you.
Sure. And look what you've done with Gamepad B. That's the one where it's the B key, which is just like escape, which is will also be, if you don't handle it, which you are here,
Yep.
it'll raise the back requested
Back
event.
requested event, yes.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Anything else special about Xbox?
Well, anybody who's played Xbox games will realize that there's a whole class of games that are multi-user. And previously, when you were building applications that targeted the Xbox platform, be they 360 in black and white, or the Xbox One, then
Hilarious.
then you had to deal with multi-user scenarios and understand what the active user was, what other users were on there, and allow transitions between users. You don't need to worry about that with the Xbox One UWP. Most applications will be single user only. In fact, you'll actually have to be logged in as a single user before you can launch an app. And if you log out of that user, then your app will actually be terminated.
Same thing when you're running on the desktop. You have to interact with the store, and so you have to be logged in.
Correct. However, there is an option with the Xbox One UWP apps to support multi-user. It's not something that's
Two users logged in at the same time.
2 users, up to 4 users logged in at the same time.
Yeah.
So you could actually handle that. It's a special feature that you would need to opt into. And there's currently is an editor support in the manifest editor to actually do this. So you'd need to manually change your manifest. But here's the thing. The reality is, in most cases, you're not going to need to do this.
Okay.
There's actually... Really, the only key scenarios you can think of are multi-user games. And the reality is UWP isn't targeting multiple games. Right. Not this type of UWP.
That's what the ID at Xbox program is for.
Exactly. And so the platform does have support for it, but in most cases, you're not going to need to be able to do it.
If you start to program your app towards this, you're really an Xbox app now, and there's really no equivalent on desktop, certainly no equivalent on IoT or anything else as well. You've really... created a little niche support, and sometimes that's the right thing to do.
Yep.
All right, so we talked about what's special for you. Obviously, you have a few resources that are different. They're different on every family. Now you know what it is on Xbox One. We also know that we have the controller as well as that little remote control, and you can handle both of those as well. And this special multi-user scenario, if that's right for you.
Yes, indeed.
All right, we'll see you again.